Welcome to another episode of Follow the Brand TV. I am your host, Grant McGaugh, CEO of 5-Star BDM, a 5-star personal brand and business development company. I want to take you on a journey through another deep dive into the world of personal branding and business development using compelling personal stories, business conversations, and tips to improve your brand. By listening to the Follow the Brand TV series, you will differentiate yourself from the competition and build trust with prospective clients and employers. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Make it one that will set you apart, build confidence, and reflect who you are. Building your 5-star personal brand is a great way to improve your skills and knowledge. If you have any questions for me or any of my guests, please email me at grant.mcgaugh@5starbdm.com. Now, let's begin with our next episode on the Follow the Brand TV.
Five-Star BDM, Brand Development Masters, is a professional consulting and advisory group keenly focused on business development services for the small to mid-sized business and entrepreneurs. Although every business is unique, they often share business development challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. Services include process improvement and operations, digital strategy and transformation, business intelligence, digital marketing, and personal branding. Our business and personal branding company has helped a number of professionals and organizations to optimize and grow. This results in more business, more opportunities, better reach, positive outcomes. Visit www.5starbdm.com today to learn more.
And while I was at Elon, I started to develop an equal love for the training side of the game, for the fitness, the strength, the conditioning, the mindset, the nutrition. So when I graduated from Elon in the late 90s, I thought, what could be better than combining my original love of basketball with this newfound love of performance training, and I became a basketball performance coach. Work I'm doing now, which is talking about leadership and communication and culture and individual and organizational performance. And so
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Follow Brand Podcast. We are now getting into our holiday season, right? And this holiday season is gift-giving season. And I got a gift for you today. Some of you remember our show that we did with Walter Bond, the thing he was doing in basketball, the things he's doing in Holiday speaking. Well, guess what? I got another great gift here. Alan Stein has been doing things for a long period of time that helps us dig deeper into what we're doing to actually present ourselves, whether it's from a business standpoint, a career standpoint, whether you're into sports, but how do we get motivated every day, every week, every month, every season? How can we put something on the table that is relevant to where we stand in our brand, because this is the Follow Brand show. And we got to live up to everything that we are about. So before I get off on my tangent here, let's introduce Alan Stein Jr. You'd like to come to the mic?
I'm excited to be here, Grant. It's so nice to be with you, and I'm looking forward to a fun conversation. And I appreciate Walter Bond setting the bar so high for both of us, because Walter's a pretty remarkable guy.
He is. But you are also very, very remarkable in some of your history. First, walk us through some of your history. How did you even get started in your career that led you through the MBA and then into motivational speaking?
So basketball was my first love, my first passion, and I fell in love with the game at 5 years old. And I'm so thankful that here 4 decades later, basketball is still a major driving force in my life. And I spent the first portion of my life as a very dedicated basketball player. Was able to play all the way up through Elon University down in North Carolina. And while I was at Elon, I started to develop an equal love for the training side of the game, for the fitness, the strength, the conditioning, the mindset, the nutrition. So when I graduated from Elon in the late 90s, I thought, what could be better than combining my original love of basketball with this newfound love of performance training? And I became a basketball performance coach and was able to do that for just under 20 years. While I chose to specialize mostly at the high school level, I did have opportunities to work events for Nike and Jordan Brand and USA Basketball. And I got a chance to work with some really accomplished and successful players and coaches. And then 7 years ago, in 2017, I decided to make the very distinct pivot to leave the game of basketball directly and pursue a goal of becoming a corporate keynote speaker. And that's what I do at present is I teach business leaders, executives, sales professionals, how they can apply the same mindsets and rituals and routines and disciplines and approaches as elite athletes. I teach them how they can apply those traits in their businesses, and having an absolute blast doing it. So it's a lot of fun.
I can see you're having fun. I would have fun. I want you to take us through a game. And this game is that you got to work with professionals. Now, I'm going to back you up just a little bit before you get into the speaking portion of your career. But when you are actually coaching an athlete, you were an athlete, you've got to then help them, whether it's nutritionally, that's on the physical level, but then you're actually working with them on emotional levels, mental levels, spiritual levels, trying to get them to their optimum performance in the peak of a game to actually win, because they're competing against other athletes that are just as capable as they are, but they have to have that edge, a little bit of edge. Talk to us about some of the stories that you have actually been able to impart some wisdom on your side that you thought made it different for some of the people that believed in you.
Well, one of my favorite parts of kind of the coaching paradigm is I'm thankful that I've learned just as much from the athletes I've worked with as I'd like to believe that I imparted on them and shared with them. I mean, that's one of the fun parts about that dynamic, was constantly learning. And that's why I was able to pick up so many different approaches and strategies and mindsets that now apply to different areas. One of the biggest lessons that I personally learned was the first time I met Kobe Bryant. And he said something that really changed fundamentally the way I saw the world. And that was, the best never get bored with the basics. And I've kind of used that as my own operating system and mantra in everything that I do in my life, is I try to pinpoint and get clarity on the fundamentals that are required to be elite in that certain area of my life, whether it's speaking or writing or parenting or running a business, but figuring out what those fundamentals are and then working towards mastery of those fundamentals during the unseen hours. And, this concept that the best never get bored with the basics, it also taught me that just because something is basic in principle, it doesn't mean it's easy to do. That basic and easy are not synonyms, and yet people mistakenly use those words as if they're interchangeable. What it takes to be an elite podcast host, an elite author, an elite basketball player, an elite teacher, what it takes to be elite in those areas is very basic in principle, but obviously is not easy to do because it requires discipline, it requires consistency. So the discernment between those two was really profound for me. And then having learned that directly from Kobe, I now teach that with every group that I work with, is the importance of them figuring out what their basics are and how they can create a system or a process to work towards mastery of those basics during the unseen hours.
Man, that is wonderful. I understand directly what you're saying. I used to say this to myself. You can read a book about swimming and you probably get some pretty good information around. You can read books about, golfing. You can read great books about golfing. You're like, wow. But that doesn't make you a golfer. It doesn't make you a golf pro because when you hit the field, you actually put the club to the ball. That's a whole nother story. You might be able to recall some of the tips, some of the strategies, some of the information, but in the moment of the game is where the rubber meets the road, right? How can you recall some of those things that get you to that next level? I know I have to do that all the time. To your point, first define those basics. What you just said, do you know what your basic fundamentals are in the game that you are playing? Is that written out? Have you really studied that? Have you brought that out? Is it visible? Because if it's not visible, then you don't really understand. Or the basics that you think are the basics are someone else's basics, because they're very, very good in these areas. The person that probably wrote the book on swimming or they wrote that book on golfing, those are their basics because they were very good in that area. Maybe, in an area of 100%, maybe that applied to maybe 50 to 60% of the people. But there's a lot to say about personalization, about precision, and what's right for you. Can you elaborate more on where I'm going with this conversation?
Well, really, it just comes down to awareness and clarity, and awareness is always the first step to improvement, because we'll never fix something we're unaware of, and we'll never improve something we're oblivious to. So that's why getting clarity and having an awareness on the basics that we need to work on is so important. But then it certainly requires a combination of discipline and consistency to stick with them. And, the term I've already said a couple of times of unseen hours, that's where most of future success is built, is when no one else is watching. An NBA game, for example, that's an opportunity for players to showcase everything that they've been working on, in practice and in workouts and in empty, gyms during the off season. Same thing with speaking. People tend to make the mistake of thinking that I get paid a certain fee for the 1 hour that I'm on stage. But, there's a lot more that goes into the work, the homework, the due diligence, the preparation, the rehearsal, the years of experience that goes into the opportunity to step on stage for 1 hour. So when someone thinks that I'm getting this fee for 1 hour of work, they're negating all of the work that goes into that. There's no such thing as a 1 hour of work when it comes to a keynote. That's dozens and dozens and dozens of hours prepping and rehearsing and doing due diligence to prepare to have the right to step on stage and share that with an audience. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and that's part of figuring your basics out. If the goal is to be an elite podcast host or an elite author or an elite basketball player, ask yourself, what are the things that I do before the cameras start rolling that put me in a position to be successful? And then how consistently am I doing those things on a very, regular basis?
I tell you, man, your confidence exudes. I feel it all the way through and through in our conversation. Your confidence is there. I want to know, when you had to make that decision of leaving a comfortable career that you were already in, you had been doing it for a number of years, you had become adept in that field, and then take that leap of faith into motivational speaking. What was that pivotal moment that you say, I can do this and I can do this well?
Really, my purpose today is to introduce a very neat person. It's your keynote speaker. This individual is a business expert, and he's as highly sought after professional speaker as there is. And he's the founder of the Bond Group.
So today I want to talk to you. How about that?
This Bond Group organization impacts companies professionals at all levels on the power of being accountable. And this individual also, before founding this training and development company by the name of Walter Bond, played professional basketball for NBA teams such as the Utah Jazz, Detroit Pistons, and the Dallas Mavericks.
Now, let me set this up before I get into my program. We're gonna have a lot of fun today. I made it to the NBA because I was fundamentally sound. No other reason.
Walter delivers more than 100 life-changing keynotes and seminars each year.
Every single day, I drilled the fundamentals. So when I left sports and got into business, I didn't focus on making money.
Walter has received numerous awards such as the Best Motivational Speaker, Top 5 in Motivation.
People want to have success. People want to make a lot of money, but they want it to be easy without any challenge.
He's also featured in an upcoming Oprah Winfrey Network special.
I tell you what, Jonas, transitioning out of sports is tough for anybody. Your whole life is sold out to the sport, and then one day it's taken away, and now you got to figure out the next plan, and you haven't had time to make a plan because it takes such a commitment to play pro sports.
Now I want you to be confident, but don't you dare cross that line into arrogance, because arrogant people stop growing. Arrogant people stop developing because arrogant people think they have arrived. My arrogance almost cost me my future. What do I need to do? You see me operate. You see what I'm doing. I'm tired of making excuses. I'm tired of justifying. What do I need to do? I went to that coach's office for 4 years. It started as a joke. That last year, he teared up. He said, son, when I recruited you, I heard you was a mama's boy. But he gave me the biggest compliment I've ever had in my life. He said, you are not a mama's boy. In fact, you're one of the toughest players I've ever had. The biggest compliment he ever gave me. You are just like your daddy. What do I need to do?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage award-winning speaker and business coach, Mr. Walter Bond.
Being extraordinary is having a relentless commitment during the unseen hours to work towards mastery of your craft and focus on the fundamentals. Being extraordinary is about doing the little things right every single day. Before I ever took the stage as a corporate keynote speaker, I dedicated my life to helping the world's best basketball players get even better. As a performance coach, my primary responsibility was to help players improve their strength, speed, power, and on-court athleticism. But the only way to do that was to level up their habits, mindset, focus, and discipline, as those traits became the foundation to which the rest of their game was built. So later that day at camp, I went up to Kobe again and said, Kobe, I don't understand. You're the best player in the world. Why are you doing such basic drills? And he flashed that $1 million smile and he gave me a very friendly wink, but he said in a serious tone, why do you think I'm the best player in the world? Because I never get bored with the basics. I had a chance to meet Kevin Durant when he was 15 years old. So I had no idea whether or not he actually liked the workout. So I simply asked him. I said, hey, young buck, did you like that workout? And I remember him looking up and as serious as can be, he said, no, I didn't. But I know this is what I need to do if I ever want to play in the NBA, so when can I see you again, coach? If memory serves, it never took him longer than 12 to 15 minutes to swish 5 in a row. That young man was Stephen Curry of the Golden State Warriors, who will go down in history as the greatest shooter that the game has ever seen. And it's not by accident. It's not by luck. It's not because his dad played in the NBA. It's because he's willing to hold himself to unparalleled standards. In the first game that the intern recorded for Steve Nash, he delivered 239 high fives, fist bumps, and pats on the butt. He is a furnace of human connection. I didn't have the mindfulness or presence or awareness that I'd like to believe I have now, because I don't remember a single word that either one of us said. We talked for 10 minutes and I don't remember a single word, but I'll never forget how he made me feel. He made me feel like I was the most important person in that gym. The same holds true in business. Your personal habits, mindset, focus, and discipline dictate how well you lead, how well you sell, and how well you can make a meaningful contribution to everyone and everything around you. That was an epiphanal, life-changing lesson for me, because it's when I realized that just because something is basic, it doesn't mean that it's easy. Those words are not synonymous, and yet people often use them interchangeably. Just because something is basic, it doesn't mean that it's easy. See, life provides us so many opportunities to gather feedback. If we go through the world with our eyes and our ears open and have the humility and vulnerability to take feedback and accept feedback and then respond to it in a favorable way, that's how we grow consistently. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What are the non-negotiable principles that you use to guide your life? Are you at a point where you live by a standard as opposed to living by emotion? When you can live by core values instead of living by the roller coaster of feelings that we experience as human beings, you'll become the most magnetic person in any room. In today's day and age, where we are literally bombarded with digital distractions hundreds of times every minute of every single day, I don't know that it's realistic to expect ourselves or to expect our team members to have long periods of sustained, uninterrupted focus. But what each and every one of us can do is learn how to quickly be aware of when we're distracted or when our mind starts to wander, and we can quickly refocus that lens and dial back in on what's most important. I now teach leaders and their entire organizations how to utilize these proven principles and develop the same strategies, rituals, and routines as the game's most accomplished players and coaches. Now, many of you are servant leaders. You're servant leaders at heart. You're servant leaders in everything that you do. And one of the problems, though, with servant leaders is many times you're so busy serving others that you forget to fill your own tank. And while your intentions may be noble, it's actually an act of selfishness. When you show up as anything less than your best self, you give the team less of a chance to win. That means you're being selfish. And I know that that can be a really challenging concept to wrap your mind around, because how could someone be selfish who is always giving and serving? Well, trust me, the people in this room, your spouses, your loved ones, your family, your children, they all need you to be your best self. It is not the world's job to conspire to make all of us happy. The vast majority of things that go on in this world are not to my liking and they're not to my preference. It's my job to adapt to them so that I can still live a fulfilled life. And it's the same thing there. We're going to experience losses. We're going to miss shots. We're going to have some bumps and bruises along the way. But how do we as a group, what type of grit and resilience do we show in moving past those? And that's what he would emphasize. We'd never emphasize the loss. We'd always emphasize the lesson. The trigger in the saying that I use is one that I've heard this both from Nick Saban, the head football coach at Alabama, and I've also heard it from Oprah Winfrey. So it has to be true. If those two people are saying it, it has to be true. That the definition of being in the present moment and being able to refocus the lens is to be where your feet are. Whether you're a parent or a leader within the company, holding people accountable shows them that you care. And in order for you all to reach that North Star, you have very high standards. And the key is not just having high standards. Anyone can have high standards. Do you hold each other accountable to executing those high standards? On one hand, you have everything that you know fills your bucket, recharges your battery, and allows you to be the best version of yourself. And then on the other hand, you have what you're actually doing at the bookends of your day. And I want to see how much crossover there is. Now the next step is finding ways to start integrating list number 1 into list number 2. And if you do that, I promise you, you will see your development, your growth, and your performance skyrocket immediately. All right, you guys ready? Let's end on a high note. I believe in you, I care about you, and I know you can do it. Get those hands ready. I got you. Ready? As you can see, you still have some work to do. So do it. Thank you guys so much.
Well, one of the reasons I decided to leave the basketball training space was I was starting to experience burnout. I wasn't as curious or as fascinated by my work as I was by some other areas. I mean, for the most part, my job was to help players improve their physicality and their on-court athleticism and their mindset. And while I certainly enjoyed doing that for almost 20 years, that no longer fascinated me near as much as the work I'm doing now, which is talking about leadership and communication and culture and individual and organizational performance and so forth. So for me, I had so much respect for the game of basketball, for the coaching craft, for the players that I was working with, that I didn't want to stay in an industry where I was no longer all in. You know, I didn't want to just go through the motions or mail it in. So I knew that I needed to make a change. And that's why I decided to pivot over and try something different. And even though my technical definition is keynote speaker and author, I still very much consider myself a performance coach. But instead of helping basketball players and perform on the court, I now help sales professionals and business leaders and executives and entrepreneurs perform better in their own respective lives and businesses. So it's not as much, I don't view me changing my job near as much as I simply changed the audience and I changed the modality of what it was that I was sharing. But yeah, for me, the most important part is that I do work that I'm passionate about. I do work that I feel like I'm pretty good at, or at least have the potential to be good at. And I do work that is in service of others, that is making a contribution. And as long as the work I'm doing intersects at that point, then I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. And, you know, I don't know what the future holds for me. I mean, right now, I love what I'm doing so much. I can't imagine doing anything else. But I also thought that when I started out in the strength and conditioning space. So 10 years from now, I may not be a full-time keynote speaker, but I can promise you that whatever I'm doing 10 years from now, it will be something I'm passionate about. It'll be something that I feel like I have some natural tendencies to being pretty good at. And it'll be something where I feel like I'm being of service to other people and I'm adding value. So as long as those three things are true, then I feel great about whatever it is that I'm doing.
Well, I feel good. I feel great. But now I want to pick your brain a little bit. Since I got you here, I want some coaching. I need some coaching. I want some executive coaching. I want some sales coaching. Here's one thing that I have found through my 150 episodes of podcasting, and I've talked to a lot of different executives. One thing that always comes up, and it helps the guests to really think about this, to really look at this, and it's important, and that is situational awareness. Situational awareness and emotional intelligence is very hard when you say, well, how do you train somebody to understand? How do you get information about that? Until you're in the throes of that particular situation, what is the awareness that you can then deploy? How can you work through it? How do you coach people in the moment, or they may be about to be in the moment, around situational awareness?
Well, it all comes down to awareness in general. I mean, we all have to have the humility to acknowledge that each and every one of us has blind spots. I mean, I know that I have blind spots. Now, I don't know what they are. That's why they're blind spots. But I have the humility to acknowledge that there's plenty of things in this world that I don't know that I don't know. And there's plenty of things in this world that I can't see through my very biased lens. And when I say biased, I don't use that in a bad way. You know, I see the world based on all of my previous life experiences, all the people that have poured into me. It's how I was raised. It's where I was raised. It has to do with my age. It has, like, all of these things. I mean, you know, you and I, no doubt, have different perspectives on certain areas of life, just simply because we are different human beings. And having an acknowledgement and admission of that, I've always tried to use as a way to draw closer to others. So if you happen to have a difference of opinion on something or a different perspective, instead of me leaning in with judgment and being critical or making assumptions, instead I try to lean in with fascination and curiosity and say, Grant, why do you believe what you believe? That's a very interesting take that you have on that. At face value, I may not agree with your perspective, but I would love to learn more about why you think what you think. And it's been my experience that when you lean in with curiosity and fascination, that's a way you strengthen human connection. It's also a way that you learn. If I think that I know everything, I'm not going to learn anything. So the first thing I need to be able to do is say, there's a whole host of things that I acknowledge that Grant knows way more about them than I do. So it's best for me to be a student. It's best for me to take a step back and learn from you and ask questions, and that will help minimize blind spots. The other thing I do is I make sure to surround myself with people that care enough about me to help expose those blind spots and to help share and say, hey, Alan, you're looking at it this way, but have you ever thought about looking at it from this angle or trying this? And that takes an open-mindedness. And part of open-mindedness is the ability to be humble. It's the ability to be vulnerable. And these are all things that I'm not a master of any of these things. These are all things I'm still continuing to try to work on. But to me, you improve situational awareness by being aware of the fact that you don't know everything that's going on within any situation, and you take steps to try to close some of those gaps. And you do acknowledge that every situation is different because every time and place and person that we're around is different. And you have to pick up on cues. You've got to be a good listener. You've got to be observant. You've got to care about others. And, you've got to be able to know the difference between, how you behave if you're with your friends and you're at an NFL football game as a fan, and how you behave if you're going in for an important job interview. Like, you want to stay genuine and authentic to who you are as a person, but the way you would behave and the things you would say and do would most likely be very different in those two different scenarios. And situational awareness is simply saying, what's appropriate and okay for me to say as a fan at an NFL football game might not be appropriate and okay to say at a job interview. And it's knowing the difference between the two.
It was never my intentions, I would say, to necessarily envision myself as being the senior vice president of audit and compliance when I first got here. But one thing was always, kept me, I guess, progressing through life is always putting my best foot forward. Audit and compliance is not a revenue generating function per se, and we don't necessarily directly impact the bottom line of the organization, but from a mitigating and preventative standpoint, we may identify opportunities from an operational perspective or compliance standpoint that may lead to down the road impact indirectly in regards to from a cost saving perspective, and also a revenue enhancement opportunity.
I help industry experts commercialize their knowledge, wisdom, and skill set into a business and a brand. And I very much focus on those two areas because my passion is to commercialize personal brands. This is very important. The other thing is, Grant, a lot of people think that when they start a business, I'll get a website, I'll put up a sales page, a lead magnet, give something away for free, and go and get leads. That's all I need. And I'm going to say that if anyone is doing that today, you are absolutely going to fail. The most powerful gift that we have been given that no one seems to put any, currency on is our self-awareness. The moment you have self-awareness, the game changes.
If you can figure out a way to network, connect, create, and get your 5 to 10 minutes of FaceTime, they're happy to receive it. I'm happy to receive it. But make sure that what you have to say is impactful. Community is what raised me. A song that said, you can do anything regardless of where you're from, regardless of where your upbringing, we support you. I think the differentiator with us is that we have truly leaned in on culture. Culture is what keeps people. Something that I learned very early in my career, thankfully, is that if you're always chasing a higher salary or you're always chasing a title, you're gonna find it. If you go out looking for a higher salary, you're gonna find it. If you want a bigger title, you're gonna find it. But culture and the way that you feel when you step into the hospital, the way that you feel when you step into your workplace, that you're not gonna find everywhere.
Yes, 100%. And the thing I got what you just said, I love how you gave space. You gave space to yourself to learn. Give yourself some space. Give yourself some mental space. Give yourself some emotional space, some physical space to understand the situation a little deeper before you make that leap of faith. If you might have to take that step in the wrong direction. And just because, like in a basketball game, you might take that step and they steal the ball, but now you're aware of that situation. And, it's about repetition. Are you repeatedly taking or making that same mistake over and over again? Are you learning, during the game of life to like, all right, there's a possibility there, but giving yourself some space to learn, I think is awesome that you stated that. I want to ask you this because I'm very curious about this. I want you to take you back in now in your career as a speaker, motivational speaker. What was one of your best speeches you made, and why was that the choice that you selected as one of your most impactful speeches?
Well, without naming one specifically, which I can do, let me kind of provide a little more context. As a speaker, I evaluate how I do the moment I step off stage. I mean, I'm certainly present in the moment while I'm speaking, and I have an idea of how I feel that I'm performing, but then I certainly sit down afterwards and kind of grade myself on how I did. So when I'm done a speaking engagement, let's say I step off stage in Denver and I just gave a keynote, I'm running through a checklist and I'm grading myself. And sometimes I step off stage and go, man, I absolutely nailed it. I brought my A game. I was in the flow. I was in the zone. I just crushed that. And then admittedly, with some humility and transparency, there's times where I get off the stage and go, man, I was a little off my game today. I just wasn't as precise or as articulate or as clear. And I try to be very honest with myself. But then there's also the other half, which is the audience and the attendees and how do they feel? And there's sometimes when I step off stage and, you get a standing ovation and the audience is clapping and there's a long line of people that want to talk to you after. And then once again, admittedly, there's times where I get off stage and it's, you get a very tepid obligatory applause and it's kind of crickets. No one's interested in talking to you after, even during the performance, it was a lot of stoic faces. People didn't seem to be into it, which of course, as a speaker never feels great. but you have to acknowledge that's part of the game. So as a speaker, anytime the two things are in alignment on the positive side, I step off stage and feel like I nailed it, and the audience seems to agree and was really into it, that is the ultimate high as a speaker. The ultimate low as a speaker is when you're like, man, I was really off my game today, and the audience seemed to agree with you. I mean, that's a real gut punch. But the fascinating ones to me are when they're not in alignment. And this has happened numerous times. There have been times where my evaluation was, I crushed it. Like I was just in the flow. I was in the zone, but the audience didn't seem to respond in kind. And then there have been other times where I've stepped off stage and go, man, I was off my game today. And yet the audience thought it was one of the best things they've ever seen. And it's almost confusing when the two things don't match up. So my goal as a speaker, obviously, is to put myself in a position where I can be fully prepared to be present, to be of service to the audience, and do everything in my power to feel like I crushed it on stage. But there's nothing I can do about the audience. They just, once it leaves my mouth and it leaves the stage, they're going to receive it how they're going to receive it. And so I try not to get too caught up into either of those. One other thing I'll say is my goal is for my next keynote to always be the best one that I've ever done. I don't want to live in the past. I don't want to say the best keynote I gave was in 2019. No, man. I mean, even if that is the case, the goal is for the next keynote to always be the best one, because I want to make sure I'm on an upward trajectory and I'm improving each time. And I want to improve so much that the keynote I'm about to give in Colorado Springs in 2 days from the time of this recording, I want 3 years from now to be able to look back at that event and be like, yeah, I guess that was okay. I can look back of clips of me from 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm like, I know that was the best I was capable of then, but I've gotten way better since then. So to me, it's actually a good thing to be able to look back at previous performances and be like, yeah, that was okay. I think if you look back and go, man, that keynote 4 years ago was the best thing I've ever done, then you might not be growing or improving at the rate that I aspire to grow and improve.
I love what you said there, because, I got to say this has got to be the best podcast interview that you have ever done to date. Can we get an applause?
Yes, that is absolutely the goal.
No, man, what you said is so good, because I've got 150 episodes that I can go back and look at. That is my training. That's where I go back and I say, wow, when I first started podcasting, different interviews that I've done, I listen to every single one of them, and I try to get in my car and turn it on just like anyone else, on a pod, and just listen to it and try to be unbiased. I'm going to hopefully be more critical than others, as far as I know some of the things that were done during the show that may or may not I would have added or deleted, but this is the show. And this is what's out there, and I listen to it. And I have to admit, a lot of times I come away with, that was good. And it's not so much I did great, it's just that the guest was good, it was great, and the information was good. Did I come away inspired? Did I come away with some knowledge? Did I come away with the purpose of me listening to this podcast in the first place? Right. So when I get out of my car or whatever it was doing, because that's typically what happens in podcasting, the people, when they have the time, like, hey, I got an hour to kill, instead of listening to some mindless music or some kind of, news that's kind of disturbing, I can listen to something that's uplifting for what I need to do. So you help salespeople, you help executives, you help people in your genre to get better at their game. Tell us why someone would want to listen to you during their hour of time, listening to a podcast or in a car where they got some downtime and they need to get motivated.
You need to be messaging and communicating to a lot more folks and getting them committed to you as a brand and feeling that you are trustworthy as a subject matter expert, and for their needs and their pain points. That says, look, here are my pain points. Here's the problem that I have that I don't want, or the benefit that I want that I don't have. And Grant and Sydney understand that and are giving me information to be able to assist, in my eliminating those pain points.
You're going to get a lot out of this workshop. We're going to show you ways that you can begin to look at this particular problem, that you can apply different formulas, techniques, and skills. They're going to get you to that next level. And then you'll understand the value that we're bringing. I was able to grow my network to over 20,000 professionals in the field of healthcare and technology with a consistent brand presence that excites and informs my community. Become the CEO of your personal brand. You must believe in yourself.
I'm a huge believer that the way we perform in our lives, and when many people hear the word perform, they tend to think of athletes. They tend to think of musicians. They tend to think of those in the arts like theater or acting. And while those are performances, we're all trying to perform in every day of our lives. I mean, we need to perform as husbands and as fathers and as mothers and as wives. We need to perform in our communities. We need to perform in our specific vocation and whatever role that may be. So we always are looking to improve performance. And it's been my experience that the ability to improve performance is inextricably linked to how we feel about ourselves. I mean, when we perform well in any area of our life, we tend to feel better about ourselves. Our confidence goes up, our optimism goes up. So my goal is really to help folks improve performance. Now, sometimes I help them on an individual level. Can I help you individually become the best that you're capable of? But I also work with teams and brands and businesses and organizations to help them improve organizational performance, to get everybody, maximizing their contribution and their role on the team. So, and I do that because when you improve performance and you improve output, people simply feel better about themselves. It helps confidence, it helps optimism, and that's something that everyone, either consciously or unconsciously, gravitates towards and is trying to do. So if there's ever any area of your life that you're looking to up level, or you simply want to improve your self-worth and self-value and self-confidence, then I would hope that the content that I put out, whether it's on social media, whether it's in an interview like this, whether it's on stage or it's on page, I would hope that folks find that content helpful and useful on their journey to improvement.
Absolutely. I want to, before I leave, one more question, and this is more or less a shared conversation that we had a little earlier around Walter Bond. I had Walter Bond on the show about a year, maybe almost 2 years ago. He came on. He's local to my area here in South Florida. For the audience that does not know, Walter Bond was an NBA ball player when he first got started, I think in the 90s. And at the time, he was coming off the bench in college, and he was telling himself, I'm going to be an NBA ball player. You would think, you're coming off the bench in college, how are you going to play in the NBA? But he more or less willed himself to that level of play, and he played in the NBA. And after that, he became a world actually, I think he's a Hall of Fame speaker as of date. Hall of Fame speaker in the same vein that we got Albert Stein Jr. walking in, but he also met Walter Bond. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, well, one of the things that makes Walter so remarkable is, I mean, he's ascended to the top 1% of both of his careers and vocations. I mean, if you make it to the NBA, not just are you in the upper 1%, you're in the upper 0.001%. So, the fact that he was able to do that, and now he's one of the best speakers to ever grace the stage, and that's proof by being a Hall of Fame speaker, is someone who obviously what it is he's preaching, he also practices, because he's been world-class at two different things, and two very, very different things. But yeah, so I was working as a basketball performance coach for the NBA Players Association back in the early 2000s, and they were holding what they call their Top 100 camp, where they bring in the top 100 high school players from around the country to learn from and be mentored by current and retired NBA players and coaches. So, it's kind of the best of the best at this camp. And I was asked to be the performance coach there, which was a real honor. And part of what they do for the educational component is they bring in guest speakers. And they brought in this guy named Walter Bond, who admittedly at the time, I didn't know who he was. I wasn't familiar with him. But, within a couple of minutes of him speaking, I was absolutely blown away. I mean, he had so much charisma and so much passion and so much likability. And he was a masterful storyteller. And, he's got this group of, let's be honest, alpha males sitting in front of him. And he had us laughing. He had us crying. He had us thinking. He had us feeling motivated and inspired. And I remember sitting there thinking that day, like, I want to do that one day. Like, this guy is as close to a rock star as I've ever been. I want to do that. Now, at the time, I didn't want to do it then because I loved the basketball training that I was doing at present. But Walter planted a very important seed in me that one day I would want to pursue becoming a professional speaker. And, fast forward about 15 years from that day, when I started to experience some burnout in the training space, and I knew that I needed to make a difference, make a change and do something different, that's when that seed started to bloom. And I thought I might as well go ahead and take a leap at being a professional corporate keynote speaker, all because of that seed Walter had planted. And, that's one of the things that I now hold most valuable as a speaker. Walter is now aware of this story because I've told it a couple times, and I've had some mutual friends like you that have been kind enough to connect us. And I've told Walter about that. But had that not happened, he would never know the impact that he had on my life. He would never know that something he said at just one of his events in the early 2000s put me and my life on a completely different path and a different course. And I hold that very sacred. I know that whether it's one of your listeners right now or someone that's going to be on stage in Colorado Springs in 2 days when I'm there, that I may say something that plants a really important seed in their life that causes them to slightly change course. And, I hold that to the highest regard. I hold myself to a very high standard in having an opportunity to do that. So yeah, I'm incredibly indebted to Walter for planting that seed. He's someone I really admire and respect the career that he's built. And I can tell you, it is going to be super cool for me one day to share the stage with him, that we're both going to be hired as speakers at the same event. And I don't know if that'll happen in 1 month, 1 year, or a decade from now, but it will happen at some point, and it will really be a cool kind of full circle moment for me.
Well, I tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to invite you and Walter to the Follow the Brand. We're going to have a Follow the Brand event in South Florida in the next few years. If not in 2024, 25, we're going to bring everybody back. And we're going to have that moment because that's important. And I know Walter was just getting into his speaking career in the early 2000s. We're talking, this is 2023 now. He's written, books that are Hall of Fame. I'm going to call them Hall of Fame books, right? They're just bestsellers. These are Hall of Fame books. And he would love for me to say that. But you are on the trajectory to do the same. You got Success Simplified back there. You are doing it. And when you can simplify certain very difficult things to do in life and actually make it actionable for a large group of people, that's powerful. So I really, really applaud you for doing that. help our audience know how to contact you. We know you're going to be in Colorado Springs soon, but how can they also contact you if they need to book you to come out and be an executive speaker for their particular conference?
Well, the best thing to do is go to alansteinjr.com. That's kind of the hub for everything I have speaking wise. And if anyone listening feels like this type of message would be right for your event or organization, there's a contact tab. You can fill that out and someone from my team will get back to you very promptly. I'm also very easily found and very accessible and responsive on social media, just at Alan Stein Jr. On Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And then I have 2 books. Raise Your Game and Sustain Your Game, both of which are easily found on Amazon or Audible or wherever you like to get your books and audio books. This was a really fun conversation. I appreciate your support, and nothing would make me happier than one of your listeners reaching out and saying, hey, we'd love to have you speak to our team. That would be a really cool moment for me.
Oh, man, you've raised my game. This has been wonderful. I encourage everybody in the Follow the Brand and your world that's going on in the Albert Stein Jr. world, or excuse me, Alan Stein. Did I say Albert? I'm thinking okay. Albert Einstein, am I not? Albert Einstein. You probably have heard that of you, Albert Einstein, because you're very, very intelligent. So this probably my mind is coming together like that. This guy is genius. He's genius. I love it. Bring him up, man. This is wonderful. But I want to encourage everybody to go to 5-Star BDM. That's B for brand, D for development, infomasters.com. You're going to see all the episodes I'm talking about. You're going to see Walter on there, and you're definitely going to see Alan Stein Jr. really soon on the Follow Brand podcast. So thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you. This was fun.
You're welcome.
Follow the Brand TV broadcast host, Grant McGaw, as he visits with top executives and entrepreneurs to find out their secrets of success with their personal brand. Follow the Brand TV broadcast host as he focuses on brand development to build better relationships, bring value to your business, relationships, and career. You will enjoy listening to each episode that is tailored to speak to you directly. If you're looking for this type of clarity in terms of building your brand, you have tuned into the right station. Each episode will help you to shape a conversation in the 5-Star BDM network of 20,000 professionals and become a springboard for your corporate engagement and business opportunities. Each guest will frame their story in the areas of personal branding, business development, career development, financial empowerment, and technology innovation. Grant McGaw explains why he is the CEO and owner of his own professional career. Grant is an accomplished business leader and entrepreneur who wants to give back to individuals to grow their personal brand strategy. Tune in as he weaves his story about new possibilities, while to you exceed expectations. If you love storytelling, this show will make for fun.
Tune in for our next show or click on our website at www.5starbdm/followthebrandtv. Thank you. Hey everyone, it's Grant McGaw, CEO of 5-Star BDM and host of the award-winning Follow the Brand podcast and TV series, where I help you to build a 5-star brand that people will follow. My genius is personal brand development through intelligent communication and helping you achieve your business and career goals. I am a requested speaker on digital technology and brand development issues. I want to work with you to increase the value of your current opportunities while attracting new ones. Every one of you is unique, and we all share challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. As a super connector, I work with you as an executive coach to guide you along the complicated business and career development road, providing the enhancement tools and information you need to succeed. Together, I will help you succeed in today's challenging business climate. I will evaluate, and measure your progress. Best of all, I am right alongside you every step of the way. Build the brand called you. Genius.